Hello. Thank you for joining us today at Incubeta Ignites webinar. We're talking about marketing post-lockdown, focusing on the house and home sector, joined by Craig Brown today. I'm Hannah. I'm Associate Director of Business Development here at Incubeta. A little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar is going to run about 30 minutes. If you have any questions, please ask them in the questions chat tab you'll see in your chat window. There's also a chat feature to allow side discussions with any other attendees. We're also recording today's session and we'll be sharing out the recording via email afterwards. All right, so now it is my pleasure to introduce Craig Brown, who is the head of delivery at Incubeta. He's been with us for about 7+ years. Disney obsessed, proud dog dad, and over to you, Craig.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm definitely a proud dog dad. And here is how proud I am is that our dog even gets carried when we go on walks. It's a little bit embarrassing. So just a little bit about what we're going to talk today. So we're going to start off with consumer behavior and where the world is in September of 2020 and some of the things that are changing in the house and home sector before moving on to how we would maximize on some of these opportunities as an agency and as a potential partner to really take advantage of what's happening. So first of all, with the consumer behavior, just a bit about where our information's come from. So we use data from the Harris Poll. So the Harris Poll is a survey company that specializes in collecting data to try and give a view of what's happening across the US. And starting back in March, they created their COVID tracker, which really continues to ask evolving questions based on where we are with COVID and the state of the world, and also Google surveys. The Harris Poll is a Stagewell company and have been tracking public opinion for over 5 decades. The second part is Google. Google are always a really good source of information from a survey basis with their customers and consumers, but also from what are people actually searching for. So just starting with some of the survey analysis and what we've seen, there's definitely an increasing trend of people relocating, being based in New York. We're seeing this a lot, both with clients, with staff, with friends, family. And a lot of people are sort of maintaining income as well. And we're going to discuss how we know that. So from a relocation side of things, there's 2 really interesting stats. The first is from Zillow. Zillow's seen a 26% increase in traffic to its for sale pages year over year, which really is significant. And they're actually starting to set records for the amount of traffic that they're seeing on their for sale pages, which shows there are a lot of people considering moving at this time. And that's backed up with how people are moving. So Hearst Media have got some data from the US Postal Service, which says that the number of addresses that have been changed from New York City to Connecticut since March is now 100,000. This is against 1,000 last year. So that is a 100 times increase for the amount of people moving out of the city and into Connecticut, where there's a bit more space. And 66% of people expect their income to be either the same or higher as 2019 and 2020. Now, the reason for calling out the move to Connecticut and the income element is starting to think about, well, what does that mean for people's disposable incomes and some of their potential behaviors? So if there's more people moving out to Connecticut for more space, there's a strong chance that they're going to be looking to buy more furniture and more home goods. And if they're still earning the same amount that they were last year or potentially even more, then they probably have some disposable income to help fill some of those rooms. So it's a real positive for this industry to show that things are potentially going to continue to move in the right direction, and we're really going to see continual peaks. What we have seen is at the beginning of this period, we saw a lot of growth for people looking at buying home office supplies. This is Harris Poll data, and you can really see that through April on a weekly basis into May, we really saw that people buying home office supplies start to drop off and fall away. So sort of if you haven't taken advantage of the home office and you're still looking to do that, you've potentially missed the boat slightly. But what we can see with the blue line, which is household goods and furniture, and also yellow with the buying a house, you can see that these are slowly continuing to increase of people who are looking to invest in household goods and furniture, and also people looking to buy a home. So that continues to show a really strong progression of this is an industry that is continuing to grow and move forwards. And we can see this really with how people are searching on Google. So the number of impressions that are being shown on Google so far this year, if we compare that to 2018 and 2019, are up massively. We're talking about 100% increases, with the index hitting 100 in sort of April, May time against a base of 50 last year. And you can, like, 3-year highs, it shows that this is an industry that people are searching for and looking for. People are spending more times in their homes. So there's a strong likelihood that they're finding things in their homes that maybe don't work for them. There's things that maybe they want to upgrade, that if they're going to work and their kids are always going to school, aren't really necessary. But we can see that we're still huge volumes coming through at the moment in this vertical. So really, what does all this mean? And I think despite the continued economic uncertainty, demand is still really high for house and home. And that will continue to stay the same as people continue to look at how they're living their lives, where they're living their lives, and the type of accommodation that they're in, and the opportunities that presents for further furniture purchases. The home office growth has really died down, but it doesn't mean we expect to see a real drop-off in this area. And we're excited about what this industry offers. It was one that's been buoyant through a lot of the COVID time, and we expect that to continue through. We know Q4 and January are really big times for this industry as well. So this is definitely a time that brands should be looking to continue to maximize on the opportunity that's being presented to them, because it really is significant. And that takes us into how does Incubeta deliver on success? So it starts with something that we call climb, which we'll explain in the next slide. But really, we want to introduce why we talk about climb from a digital standpoint. Really, we've built climb to help your business win. And when we say win, we mean win auctions, win interactions, and ultimately win sales. The reason that we've built this and we focus on digital and we talk about winning is because 60% of all media budgets are now digital. 71% of those digital budgets are going to Google, Facebook, or Amazon. All of those are auction-based programmatic spaces when it comes to media buying. And within display, where people may think it is still direct buys, people are doing deals with websites, 85% of display activity is bought programmatically and bought through an auction. So the reason that we've built Climb is because you need to win auctions. And we have spent a long time working with the partners and working with the platforms such as Google and Facebook in learning to understand their algorithms and learning to understand how we're going to help you win auctions for the most valuable customers, turn that into sales and turn that into growth for your business. So what does Climb actually stand for? Climb starts with convert. So it's very obvious to say if you increase your conversion rate by 10%, your business will do 10% better. But there's so much more to converting customers than just that final conversion point on your website or in your store. It comes with every interaction. Now, there's data out there that suggests a consumer will interact with a brand 7 times before they go on to convert from them. That means that you have 7 opportunities that you need to push that consumer down into the next level of your funnel, into the next message that you want them to see. So it's not just about converting on the website, it's about converting every interaction that you have with a potential customer. So for example, if this is in display and you're running retargeting, if you could increase your click-through rate by 10%, that's 10% more people coming through to your website who you've engaged with previously. If you can show them a more relevant message and drive them back to your website, they're more likely to convert. And so it really is about how we build on this experience and build and increase the conversion of every consumer interaction. But it's also about knowing what conversion you're trying to drive at every point you're engaging with someone. This takes us into leverage. Leveraging is all about leveraging data. That probably is the most spoken about topic in the industry at the moment, is data, particularly with the movements of cookies and the announcements that Apple have made recently with how they're changing privacy, particularly within the app environment. Leveraging your own data, your first party data, is essential to you winning this. And this starts with understanding who your most valuable consumers are and being able to find more of them. That's really what you're trying to achieve when you're leveraging data, is how do I find more of my most valuable customers? Because if you can find more of those customers, your profitability and the revenue that you can drive increases significantly. We then move into integrate. So many businesses fall down because they work in silos. We see it as an agency all the time where we don't work with our, if we don't work with our clients close enough, or we're not able to work with all of our clients' partners, we really start to hit roadblocks in how quickly we can move things through and how quickly we can move performance. I think the one people will be most familiar with is the creative to media side of things. How many times do media buyers feel that they're not getting the creative that they need from creative teams? And how often do creative teams feel that media teams don't understand how complex and difficult it is to get the message into the format that they want? Integrating those two elements can really, really drive a big increase in performance. That's why Incubeta, our media planners and media buyers, work hand in hand with our creative producers to make sure that everybody is on the same page of what needs to be delivered and when, but also what needs to be delivered to maximize performance. Marketing is not always about the prettiest. It's about what drives the most performance, whether that's clicks, whether that's revenue. It depends on whatever your KPI is. KPIs takes us really nicely into measure. And I think this is an area that a lot of people know they need to do, but need to understand more, which is, how am I measuring my marketing activity? What is the impact of this marketing activity? And is it incremental to my business? The amount of times we've seen people go, okay, we want to run YouTube and we want to measure it on revenue. So how many people watch a YouTube video and then go on immediately from clicking on that ad to actually converting? But is it instilling a brand awareness and a brand message that means someone might come to your website directly? Yes, absolutely. So how do you make sure that you're measuring YouTube, A, to make sure it's having an impact on your business's bottom line, but B, that you measure and optimize it to the right KPI to move forwards? And then the final thing is buy, which is, how do you use all of this together to make sure you feed the algorithms all of the most relevant information? It seems like the most simple thing, which is, oh, you just bid towards ROAS, or you bid towards a CPA or revenue or whatever that is. But that may not be the best way for an algorithm to work. For example, Facebook's algorithm requires 20 conversions over a 2-week period. If you're splitting out campaigns so that you don't have 50 conversions, then the algorithm is not going to be able to work to its full potential, and you're going to have wasted, inefficient media budget. So what we've built for Climb, and it ties into Buy, is how do we make all of this data and all of these elements work together to ensure that we are giving the platforms and the algorithms the most amount of information to acquire the best value customers at the best rate for your business. We really just wanted to show how we've started to do this with a brand in this industry. So we started working with a brand back in March. The 14th of March to be precise, 2 days before we went into lockdown. It was a very interesting time to transition an account. We've actually not all been in the office together since we took this account over, which, considering we're now in September, is a very strange thing to be saying. But what you can see here is the year-on-year performance going through the back end of 2019 and into the front end of 2020. In red was the performance of the agency previously, and in green is the performance that we're seeing now. And you can see previously that if you looked at the 5 months prior to us taking over, they were down 35% year on year. If we look at the months that we are up, we're currently up 23% year on year. if we take this in and we roll that out, that's the equivalent of a $935,000 swing in revenue. Like, that's a huge increase from where if they'd have stayed at 35% down to being 23% up. This is a brand that we've really taken climb in and run with, focusing on these 5 areas, focusing on the elements that we can have the biggest impact first and are going to have the biggest impact on short-term performance, fixing some of those foundations to really help move forwards. That swing in such a short amount of time is something that we're really pleased with, the client's really pleased with, and it's something that we really want to continue to build on with them and take them through a progression where it's not just about beating their own goals, it's starting to eat into some competitors' market share. Now we're going to go down, and that was sort of a top level of how when we tie all of this together, it really has a huge impact. What we're going to do is we're just going to look at some of the examples from the clients that we've worked with within the house and home sector. So starting with the convert side of things and looking at creative and working with Koala, who are a sleep brand and focus on mattresses and bedding. So what we did was with them was really to produce a smart dynamic creative solution. So prior to this, they were just using static creatives that they uploaded in line with the latest promotion, and they didn't move, they weren't animated. We built dynamic creative, dynamic in that it moved, which is much more eye-catching. We often see creatives that move versus creatives that don't move. We can see up to a 68% increase in click-through rates because they're more eye-catching and more people see them and therefore engage with them. And then also showing more relevant data and more relevant creative to the person who's searched. So based on their behavior, whether they were looking specifically for bedding previously and were in Google's in-market for bedding or Google's in-market for mattresses, that changed the product that we would show and it changed the message that we would show. So just showing that much more personalized and relevant message led to a 1.9 times increase in conversions coming through from display. The other thing that it really did was working with their in-house team to show them how they could generate these creatives faster, and it led to a 30% time saving on the creative enablement and the production time of creative. Now that's huge and allows the creative team to focus on other areas and produce other assets that we could then roll out. So it really allowed us to launch other channels because not everything was focused on producing just display banners. It enabled us to launch things across more social channels, particularly some of those newer ones such as Pinterest, which isn't new, but they're really starting to get their act together from a advertising standpoint in a way that they haven't done before. The next part is leverage, and talking about location data. The house and home industry is really interesting because of the complete variation that you have in product price, and how you have everyone needs house and home stuff, but some of it's at the very low end, some of it's at the very high end, and then you've got everything in between, and therefore that completely changes the audience that you're looking at. So what we have built is a propensity modeling tool that allows you to upload your business data, whether that's your store data, whether that's your online data, and look at the zip codes that your most valuable customers come from. Then looking at those zip codes, we look at the brand awareness, the location data, census records, historic sales, and we build all of that and then build a propensity model that looks for other zip codes that match very similarly to that maybe we don't see a strong performance, which then allows us to go, okay, these are high value zip codes that we're under indexing in. How do we raise our brand awareness? Or how do we increase our conversion rate or speak in a more localized tone to that zip code? Now, doing this is really important, especially when we talk about stores. Most people will go, okay, we know people will travel 30 miles to come to our store, and they'll just do a 30-mile ring radius around their store. If you sell furniture and say sell sofas, which are $5,000, there's going to be a lot of people within that 30-mile radius, particularly if you're city-based, who can't afford a $30,000 sofa. And we can start using some of that census data, some of that household information in terms of income, in terms of value of houses, to go, okay, there's a very low chance that someone who is living or based in this zip code is going to be able to afford the furniture, and therefore we should be excluding those. And so what we end up with is something that looks more like this map, which is, instead of just circular rings around it, we have gradings and much more of a jagged edge of how do we expect people to convert based on these zip codes. The final case study we want to go through is really talking about measurement. And in this industry, where a lot of it is still very store-based, talking about how to optimize and measure online to offline. So as we look at this, we worked with a company called Bath Store, who, so exactly what it says on the tin, they sell baths and bathroom things in the UK. And they were they used to be number one in the market. And what we did was we analyzed their website and saw that the amount of interactions they had for like on-site design and on-site pricing, you had to put in your email address. When you went in store, you also had to give an email address at time of purchase. So what we were able to do is then look at the email addresses that have been collected online, match that email address collection to a digital channel. We could then see the actions that were taken in store tied to an email address. And what we then did was we matched the email addresses. And what that would allow us to do is then see the revenue that had been driven by online interactions to then in-store purchases. What this allowed us to do was build an optimization system that led to a 226% lift in in-store revenue year on year. It allowed us to go from running about 15 non-brand keywords, which were driving revenue in paid search previously, to over 1,000 keywords, because what we saw was, particularly from a non-brand basis, people were going in store, they weren't buying online. And the highest value sales were happening in store. Very few people were spending $2,000 to $5,000 online. If they were going to do that, they were going to go in store, they were going to see the products, and they were going to spend it in store. So this is really just an indication of how much value it can show it adds. But what does this mean when it comes to bidding and algorithms? So what it then means is you go, okay, these non-brand keywords are 200% more valuable than we thought they were. If we're happy with a return of 10, it means we can, and we're coming in at now 20 when we thought we were coming in at 10, we can now afford to bid twice as high as we were previously, which means we're going to win twice as many auctions for the most valuable customers, and it's really going to help us increase our revenue. So it's just really an illustration of how making sure you're measuring your activity properly gives you a huge advantage over advertisers. If one of your competitors is doing this and you're not, they're going to be bidding twice as much as you, which means the amount of auctions they're going to be winning is going to be significantly greater. If we feed this information into the algorithm, it also means the algorithm's going to see, okay, these are the types of customers that are spending $2,000 or $3,000 in store. We're going to go and acquire more of those, and therefore they're going to win the more valuable customers, not just a greater proportion of customers. So that leaves us with about 5 minutes for questions. If there is any questions, please let us know.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Craig. I'll go ahead. I think we do have 2 questions that I'll go ahead and read off to you. The first one. If we can only accomplish one thing through the rest of the year, what should it be?
That is a great question, and I think a way all businesses should think. Of course, we want to achieve more than just one thing at a time, and only one thing towards the end of the year. But if you did have to achieve that and could only do one thing, what we would recommend is making sure that you've got your first-party data aligned, segmented, and you're starting to leverage and use that data. So a lot of brands focus so much on the new customer acquisition and fall down because they're not thinking about the customers that they're actually acquiring. Particularly at the moment, with the way the economy is, people are going back to the brands that they know and they trust and they have an emotional connection to. It's not a time to be starting to try new things. So make sure you're engaging with the customers you've already acquired and you're bringing them back. Once you know who those customers are and you've got those really valuable customers, take that information, start using it across Google and Facebook, and leverage the lookalike activity. Particularly with Facebook, the amount of information that you have of uploading your first party data, saying these are our most valuable customers, go out and find me other people who look like this, performs almost as well as retargeting does. So it's a really strong revenue driver, and something, if you're not currently leveraging, you definitely should be. But also, if you're just uploading all of your converters, start thinking about it in a different way. Maybe you just want to upload your top 10% of most valuable customers. So you're only finding the people who look like your most valuable customers, rather than the people who just maybe always come to you in sale and are buying very low margin products and you never really make any profit from.
Great. Thanks, Craig. And then we've got one more in the chat. How do we start measuring the impact of digital media on stores?
Yeah, and this is always a tricky one. It's actually a question that I used many years ago for graduates, to try and get them thinking in a different way. In which case, the answer I'd always expect, because this is a really easy one, which is use promo codes. If you know what promo codes you've got tied to and people are going in and giving those promo codes, that at least starts to give you a good tie. Promo codes are, especially in this day and age with how many people use affiliate sites and coupon sites, they do leak, and it doesn't give you a clean measure. So the way this is starting to be countered is businesses like Google and Facebook are starting to produce store measurement tracking solutions. So Google's is the most built out, and what that does is it tracks all of your users, well, all of their users, via their GPS on their phone, if you allow them to, which most people do because of Google Maps. And it can track you, and it will report on this person has visited your store if they have got within 6 feet of a location that you upload into Google, normally which you've done through Google My Business anyway. So that's a really good place to start, at least starting to measure store footfall. If you can, it will give you the ability to report by store. So you can then take the store conversion rate that you have. So it may be 10% in New York City, 20% in Paramus, New Jersey, and 30% in Knoxville, Tennessee. Start applying that and at least estimating the in-store revenue that may be being driven by your online activity. The next step after that is to start working with some other partners to track other channels. So businesses like Placed and Foursquared allow you to do exactly the same thing, but with your display activity. So again, you can start reporting footfall for display activity. And I would say footfall is the best place to start. It's not a perfect measure, but it's a good start while you work out what indicators you can use to tie people between in-store and online, whether that's email address, phone numbers, whether you have a membership club that you can sign people up to online and then they go in store and convert. That takes a bit more time to start connecting those variables. So just starting with footfall and the already off-the-shelf ability to measure it is a really good way to start.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Craig. All right. I think that's just about our time. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We'll be sending out the recording of this presentation shortly to your email address. And thanks again, Craig. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.